This video is for business leaders who love but may be blinded by complexity and the possibility of simple or simpler solutions. So watch to the end of this video for bonus material on strategic mindsets and questions for staying open to simple solutions. So this video is actually based on a lesson I recently learned about my computer the hard way, and I'm hoping I can prevent you from having to do the same thing. So while the world is complex, and it indeed is, there's lots of things that are complex, and there is no simple answers, unfortunately. And in most cases, we're better off admitting when we don't know a solution. In fact, almost always. However, we can seek out the right knowledge from the right people. But before we do that, what I learned is why it may actually, in some cases, be best to try one or more things before seeking outside help. I have no delusions whatsoever about my computer expertise. I fumble through and can do most stuff myself as long as I have the internet to help me stumble through it and fumble through it. So about 6 or 7 weeks ago, I got my computer repaired. It had seemingly completely died for unknown reasons. I took it in and got it repaired. I got to the hard drive and the solid state OS drive replaced. Suddenly, about 6 or 7 weeks later, in the midst of a Zoom meeting, the screen froze and it was like that annoying buzzing sound, which signaled you just had a catastrophic crash of my computer. But I wasn't too concerned because I've had this happen before, though not that often. Usually I just press the power button to shut it off, press it again to restart it, and it comes back. This time it didn't come back. So, that's not a big deal. It's kind of like, that sucks. I'll try again. And so I tried again, still didn't work. I still got a black screen, and again, still nothing. So I switched to my cell phone and rejoined the meeting and continued with that meeting. It was a group meeting, so I wasn't like the only person there or anything. And once the meeting was over, it was like, let me try again. I tried again and again and again, and still nothing. So damn, back to the repair shop, I guess. I emailed the shop and waited for a response, but I got no response after 2 or 3 days. And then I emailed again and I got no response after a week. I came to the incorrect conclusion that they were ignoring me. I thought they were ignoring me. The evidence suggested they were ignoring me, but I was completely wrong. They had COVID and didn't get my message for 10 days because they were sequestered at home. So that's lesson number one. While we are often, all too often, in fact, confident in our assumptions, they can be completely wrong, such as mine was, that they were ignoring me when in fact that was not the reason. And an important lesson from that is an equally simple explanation that is not the one that you think is correct can also be correct. So be mindful when you make an assumption, and likewise mindful that assumptions are equally, any two assumptions or any number of assumptions are equally likely to be wrong as they are right, unless you have evidence to say otherwise. I didn't. All I knew was I wasn't getting a response. That was all that I actually knew. Anything beyond that was my assumption. And in this case, it was a mistaken assumption that they were just ignoring me because my computer wasn't working. So after recording about 16 episodes of this show, Crush It Club, on my phone, I was finally able to take my computer to get it repaired after reaching out and finally reaching them now that they were back and recovered from COVID. He took the computer into the back of his shop. He returned a few minutes later and just said, "It works." Like, well, what do you mean it works? I've been trying to get it to work forever. He says, I said, "What did you do?" And he says, "Nothing." So I'm kind of puzzled, happy in some sense, but a little bit embarrassed because I tried it like 50 times in that two plus weeks while I was waiting to hear back and get it ready to be repaired again. So I plugged everything in front of me, including the monitor, and it worked. But the mystery was fairly quickly solved, but only partially when we learned what had actually happened. He thought maybe it was my monitor, and I says, well, I don't know. As far as I know, the monitor is fine. So he plugged it into a monitor, and what we found was, or what he informed me of, because I didn't know this, there was at least 4 different methods that I could plug my monitor into my computer. There was a DVI, an HDMI, and an old style, what was it, sub D or whatever. Anyway, there were 3 different kinds of plugs, and there was one plug for the one plug. In fact, there was essentially 5 options. There was 3 of the identical plug, including my graphics card, and then 2 different plugs on the motherboard, and I could use any of them. So when we plugged into these sockets, we found the display came up. I had never seen this. All I knew was my screen was black. So we experimented a little more, and what we discovered is that for reasons that even he didn't understand, when we plugged in 2 monitors, because I have a second monitor, the plug that worked suddenly didn't work. So plug in one monitor, it worked. Plug in a second monitor into a different outlet, and the first and the second monitor neither worked. All you could see was the pointer, the little mouse pointer. Not sure why, but what really happened here is I took in my computer to be repaired for a problem it didn't have. And so it only stopped working insofar as the combination of plugs I had used for the monitors I had stopped working, but nothing else. So I could have fixed the whole problem the same day simply by approaching the problem differently. Knowing I'm not a computer expert, it was reasonable to assume this was beyond my ability, but I should have tried the simple solution. So that really gets to the second one. Essentially, I could have fixed it by doing a little testing, admitting I didn't know what I was doing, but doing a small experiment. So the lesson 2 is it doesn't hurt to try simple solutions so long as they only take a little bit of resources, that is either a tiny bit of time and a tiny bit of money, and to do so carries little or no risk. So that's really it. I had the solution. All I had to do was do a little experimenting and it would have been solved. If that same time for you is hundreds or thousands of dollars an hour, go ahead, send it off to an expert and get a new computer the same day. You have the resources to do that. That's probably your best solution. So now, thank you for watching this far. We've reached the bonus material, and it's essentially some mindsets and questions you can ask yourself or your team to stay open to the simple solutions, which may often not be possible, but they could exist, such as has happened to me. So the first one is a simple solution impossible? Normally, I think it's better to ask open-ended WH questions, but in this case, if it is quite literally impossible, there is no way that a simple solution could work, and you know that for a fact, well, then the rest of this is irrelevant, and you need to seek that expert, that outside expert, of those expert outside resources. Now, if the simple solution is possible, then what you can ask yourself is, what simple things could we do to discover or create a simple solution? So let me give you an example of this that has nothing to do with my computer, and that is, years ago, I met an individual who, when the Tohoku earthquake happened, wanted to go there to help. And he was a computer programmer, and he realized that one of the main things that people needed help with was money to buy basic essential goods, because of course all the computers and all the digital stuff was down in the Tohoku area. You couldn't buy anything electronically, which is how many Japanese people pay for things. So it was like, what could we do to enable them to buy the essentials of life until better relief and more resources can come to help them with shelter and clothing and food and the essentials that you need within the first day or two after a natural disaster like that. So he came up with this thing using cell phones, which still worked, and blockchain, and it was really pretty complex and technical. And he says, well, you know, this way they can do this and they can do that, and then they can buy stuff, and the blockchain will instantly verify that the purchase was valid and they're not buying booze or something. And he says, well, couldn't you just have them, as long as the cell phone network is up, couldn't you just have them hold up the item and the receipt and take a photo with the cell phone and then send that either for money or for the release of the transaction? And he kind of went, oh. So the simple solution was, you have cell phones, take a photo of the receipt or of the item and the receipt instead of forming a complex blockchain operation. Sometimes the simple solution is the best solution. And that was a real life example of which I can take credit for, but I don't know if he ever utilized it. I hope he does. I hope he does, and that it helps people. So the next question you might want to ask is, how can we isolate and test just one thing or one variable at a time? Now, you do this all the time if you're involved in internet marketing or in the internet in general, right? You A/B test your thumbnails on a video. You A/B test the dialogue in your commercials. All of that, you only change one variable at a time so that you know that's what's made the difference. So this gets back to my computer. I could have and should have unplugged all peripherals from my computer. I know some experts out there and even some novices are going, Tim, you're an idiot. Yes, I am. It didn't even occur to me, which is why this is a lesson. I could have unplugged everything except the power cord, then one by one tried plugging my one monitor, my primary monitor, into every available socket to see if it worked. It would have solved my problem at zero cost and in probably well under an hour. But I didn't. So essentially what this shows you, and this taught me, is that sometimes there are simple solutions available. Don't exclude them just because they're unlikely. Ask yourself these questions that I've already framed. And that's the end of this episode. So if this video brought you any value at all, please share it with others. Thanks. This has been Crush It Club 230. Seek simple solutions, create them if necessary. My name is Tim B. Green. Bye for now.